The Varieties of Religious Experience, a study in human nature by William James, is continued, and we are in lectures 11, 12, and 13, Saintliness, and I would presume we're on lecture 12. When, says Miss Edwards, continuing the narrative from which I made quotation a moment ago, I arose on the morning of the Sabbath. They don't mean the biblical one, I'm sure they mean Sunday. I felt a love to all mankind, wholly peculiar in its strength and sweetness, far beyond all that I had ever felt before. The power of that love seemed inexpressible. I thought, if I were surrounded by enemies who were venting their malice and cruelty upon me, and tormenting me, it would still be impossible that I should cherish any feelings towards them, but those of love and pity, and ardent desires for their happiness. I never before felt so far from a disposition to judge and censure others as I did that morning. I realized also in an unusual and very lively manner how great a part of Christianity lies in the performance of our social and relative duties to one another. The same joyful sense continued throughout the day, a sweet love to God and all mankind. Whatever be the explanation of the charity, it may efface all usual human barriers. The barrier between men and animals also, we read of Taujański, an eminent Polish patriot and mystic, that one day one of his friends met him in the rain, caressing a big dog, which was jumping upon him and covering him horribly with mud. On being asked why he permitted the animal thus to dirty his clothes, Taujański replied, "This dog, who I am now meeting for the first time, has shown a great fellow feeling for me, and a great joy in my recognition and acceptance of his greetings. Were I to drive him off, I should wound his feelings and do him a moral injury. It would be an offense, not only to him, but to all the spirits of the other world who are on the same level with him. The damage which he does to my coat is as nothing in comparison with the wrong which I should inflict upon him in case I were to remain indifferent to the manifestations of his friendship. We ought," he added, "both to lighten the condition of animals whenever we can, and at the same time to facilitate in ourselves that union of the world of all spirits which the sacrifice of Christ has made possible." Of course, if you look at what Jesus taught and taking up your cross and all that, you have, sort of the Venus principle and the sun principle combined together, and an example which you can do such, much like in the, let's just call it Zoroastrian sense of saviors. André Taujański, Traduction de Italian, Turin, 1897, privately printed. I owe to my knowledge of this book and that of Taujański to my friend Professor W. Lutosławski, author of Plato's Logic. Here, for instance, is an example of Christian non-resistance from Richard Weaver's autobiography. Weaver was a collier, a semi-professional pugilist in his younger days, who became a much beloved evangelist. Fighting after drinking seems to have been the sin to which he originally felt his flesh most perversely inclined. And after his first conversion, he had a backsliding, which consisted in pounding a man who had insulted a girl, feeling that having once fallen, he might as well be hanged for a sheep as for a lamb. He got drunk and went and broke the jaw of another man who had lately challenged him to fight and taunted him with cowardice for refusing as a Christian man. Well, having to put up with that, but you don't fight just to fight, I mention these incidents to show how genuine a change of heart is implied in the latter conduct, in which he describes as follows. I went down the drift and found the boy crying because a fellow workman was trying to take the wagon from him by force. I said to him, Tom, you mustn't take that wagon. He swore at me and called me a Methodist devil. I told him that God did not tell me to let him rob me. He cursed again and said he would push the wagon over me. Well, I said, let's see whether the devil and thee are stronger than the Lord and me. And the Lord and I proving stronger than the devil and he had to get out of the way, or the wagon would have gone over him. So I gave the wagon to the boy, then said, Tom, I've a good mind to smack thee on the face. Well, I said, if that will do thee any good, thou canst do it. So he struck me on the face. I turned the other cheek to him and said, strike again. He struck again and again till he had struck me 5 times. I turned my cheek for the 6th stroke, but he turned away, cursing. I shouted after him, the Lord forgive thee, for I do, and the Lord save thee. This was on a Saturday, and when I went home from the coal pit, my wife saw my face was swollen and asked what was the matter with it. I said, I've been fighting, and I've given a man a good thrashing. She burst out weeping and said, Oh, Richard, what made you fight? Then I told her all about it, and she thanked the Lord I had not struck back. But the Lord had struck, and his blows have more effect than man's. Monday came, the devil began to tempt me, saying, The other men will laugh at thee for allowing Tom to treat thee as he did on Saturday. I cried, Get thee behind me, Satan, and went on my way to the coal pit. Now, you can certainly defend yourself, though, but Tom was the first man I saw. I said good morning, but he got no reply. He went down first. When I got down, I was surprised to see him sitting on the wagon road, waiting for me. When I came to him, he burst into tears and said, Richard, will you forgive me for striking you? I have forgiven thee, said I. Ask God to forgive thee. The Lord bless thee. And I gave him my hand, and we went each to his work. And that's in J. Patterson's Life of Richard Weaver, page 66 to 68, abridged. Love your enemies. Mark you not simply those who happen not to be your friends, but your enemies, your positive and active enemies. Either this is a mere Oriental hyperbole, a bit of verbal extravagance, meaning only that we should, as far as we can, abate our animosities, or else it is sincere and literal. Outside of certain cases of intimate individual relation, it seldom has been taken literally. Yet it makes one ask the question, can there in general be a level of emotion so unifying, so obliterative of differences between man and man, that even enmity may come to be an irrelevant circumstance and fail to inhibit the friendlier interests aroused? If positive well-wishing could attain so supreme a degree of excitement, those who were swayed by it might well seem superhuman beings. Their life would be morally discrete from the life of other men. And there is no saying, in the absence of positive experience of an authentic kind, for there are few active examples in our scriptures, and the Buddhistic examples are legendary. What the effects might be, they might conceivably transform the world. As where the future Buddha incarnated as a hare jumps into the fire to cook himself for a meal, for a beggar, having previously shaken himself 3 times, so that none of the insects in his fur should perish with him. Psychology and, in principle, the precept, love your enemies, is not self-contradictory. It is merely the extreme limit of a kind of magnanimity in which, in the shape of pitying tolerance of our oppressors, we are fairly familiar, yet if radically followed, it would involve such a breach with our instinctive springs of action as a whole and with the present world's arrangements, that a critical point would practically be passed, and we should be born into another kingdom of being. Religious emotion makes us feel that the other kingdom is to be close at hand, within our reach. Sort of sparkly, even rainbowy in the shadows, kind of see right now. It's not obscuring my regular vision, though. Sort of like auric, kind of like fainter, though. The inhibition of instinctive repugnance is proved not only by the showing of love to enemies, but by the showing of it to anyone who is personally loathsome. In the annals of saintliness, we find a curious mixture of motives impelling in this direction. Asceticism plays its part, and along with charity, pure and simple, we find humility or the desire to disclaim distinction and to grovel on the common level before God. Certainly, all three principles were at work when Francis of Assisi and Ignatius Loyola changed their garments with those of filthy beggars. All three are at work when religious persons consecrate their lives to the care of leprosy or other peculiarly pleasant diseases. The nursing of the sick is the function to which the religious seem strongly drawn, even apart from the fact that church traditions set that way. But in the annals of this sort of charity, we find fantastic excesses of devotion recorded, which are only explicable by the frenzy of self-immolation simultaneously aroused. Francis of Assisi kisses his lepers. Margaret Mary Alacoque, Francis Xavier, Saint John of God, and others are said to have cleansed the sores and ulcers of their patients with their respective tongues, and the lives of such saints as Elizabeth of Hungary and Madame de Chantal are full of a sort of reveling in hospital purulence, disagreeable to read of, and which makes us admire and shudder at the same time. So much for the human love aroused by the faith state. Let me next speak of the equanimity, resignation, fortitude, and patience which it brings. A paradise of inward tranquility seems to be faith's usual result, and it is easy, even without being religious oneself, to understand this. A moment back, in treating of the sense of God's presence, I spoke of the unaccountable feeling of safety which one may then have, and indeed how can it possibly fail to steady the nerves, to cool the fever, and appease the fret, if one be sensibly conscious that, no matter what one's difficulties for the moment may appear to be, one's life as a whole is in the keeping of a power whom one can absolutely trust. In deeply religious men, the abandonment of self to this power is passionate. Whoever not only says but feels God's will be done is mailed against every weakness, and the whole historic array of martyrs, missionaries, and religious reformers is there to prove the tranquil mindedness under naturally agitating or distressing circumstances which self-surrender brings. The temper of the tranquil mindedness differs, of course, according as the person is of a constitutionally somber or of a constitutionally cheerful cast of mind. In the somber, it partakes more of the resignation and submission. Submission is a way to translate the word Islam. In the cheerful, it is a joyous consent. As an example of the former temper, I quote a part of a letter from Professor Lagneau, a venerated teacher of philosophy who died lately, a great invalid at Paris. And this is from Bulletin de la Union pour l'Action Morale, September 1894. My life, for the success of which you send good wishes, will be what it is able to be. I ask nothing from it, I expect nothing from it. For long years now, I exist, think, and act, and am worth what I am worth, only through the despair which is my sole strength and my sole foundation, May it preserve for me, even in these last trials to which I am coming, the courage to do without the desire of deliverance. I ask nothing more from the source whence all strength cometh, and if that is granted, your wishes will have been accomplished. There is something pathetic and fatalistic about this, but the power of such a tone as a protection against outward shocks is manifest. Pascal is another Frenchman of pessimistic natural temperament. He expresses still more amply the temper of self-surrendering submissiveness. Deliver me, Lord, he writes in his prayers, from the sadness, my proper suffering, which self-love might give. But put me into a sadness like your own. Let my sufferings appease your choler, make them an occasion for my conversion and salvation. I ask you neither for health, nor for sickness, nor life, nor for death, but that you may dispose of my health and my sickness, my life and my death, for your glory, for my salvation, and for the use of the church, and of your saints, of whom I would by your grace be one. You alone know what is expedient for me. You are the sovereign master. Do with me according to your will. Give to me or take away from me. Only conform my will to yours. I know but one thing, Lord, that it is good to follow you, and bad to offend you. Apart from that, I know not what is good or bad in anything. I know not which is more profitable to me, health or sickness, wealth or poverty, nor anything else in the world. That discernment is beyond the power of men or angels, and is hidden among the secrets of your providence, which I adore, but do not seek to fathom. And B. Pascal's Varieties pour les maladies, 13 and 14 abridged. And we'll get more into this